This is unit 2 of our biblical Greek course. And in this unit, we are looking at the Greek alphabet. We are looking at the pronunciation, and we are also looking at the diacriticals. Now, what's our objective in this unit? It is to enable you to read the New Testament in its original Greek. That's the overall objective. But for us to achieve this, you must be able to have access to the New Testament. There are two Greek New Testament texts that I want to draw to your attention. The first one is the 28th edition of the Nestle-Aland. And the second one is the Textus Receptus. Now, if your English version is ESV, NET, NIV, NASB, NRSV, Christian Standard Bible, or most modern New Testament translations in English, then you need to use the 28th edition of the Nestle-Aland as your primary Greek New Testament. Now, if you're using the King James or New King James, then you will have to use the Textus Receptus as your primary version. Okay? As a qualifier, the Nestle-Aland 28th edition is more reliable than the Textus Receptus. That's not a subjective opinion. That is based on all works on textual criticism. I know textual criticism is a sensitive area, but out of that due diligence, the Nestle-Aland 28th edition is more reliable. Okay, so I will be using the Nestle-Aland edition as a primary Greek text for this particular session and the next sessions. But before I go on the next sessions, I want to show you how you're able to access the Greek New Testament. If you can buy it, well and good. But even before you buy it, you can access it either. You can access it online. You can use it online. You could even also download them online. I'll illustrate that in a minute. This, for example, is the Nestle-Aland 28th edition. This is Colossians. When you click somewhere here, you're able to select the chapter. If you want to change the book, just type in any letter. Even if you put in M, for example, it will give you the various books which have M, and I've selected Matthew. I want chapter 3. It will open, and then I'll be able to have the text. Okay, so this is the Nestle-Aland. When you go to this link, you should be able to have access to the Nestle-Aland text. So it's free access. If you're using the Textus Receptus, there are a number of websites, but this is one of them. You can get here, bibleserver.org, Bible Textus Receptus. Actually, when you get there, immediately it will give you something like this, Textus Receptus online. And then you will select here the book in this column. You can select, for example, to the Galatians. And when you click that, you'll be open to the Galatians, and then you'll be able to have access to the Textus Receptus in that particular page. There is another one, especially for some of you who may be scholars or either current or potential or future scholars. Then there is the SBL Greek New Testament. This one does not lead to a particular version, except those in particular software, but it helps. It has interlinears, and it helps to study for you to do particular analysis there. So the two primary ones, you either use this, the Nestle-Aland 28th edition, or you use the Textus Receptus. You can also download them. For example, this is my downloaded PDF of the Nestle-Aland. So I just scroll if I want to get to a particular book, and in a minute you'll be able to read all this, so don't worry. But also this is a Textus Receptus, so you can download such that even if you are offline, you can access the PDF, and then you're able to, as you read your English, compare with the Greek. And that's the kind of due diligence that we are calling you to in this particular session. So the goal is to enable you to read the New Testament in its original Greek. And because of that, you need to be able to access the New Testament. And that's why I've taken off that time to show you how to access the Greek New Testament. Then number 2, you must also understand the Greek alphabet. You must learn the Greek alphabet. The Greek alphabet has 24 letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. So there are 24 Greek letters. Then having understood that there are 24, you must understand their names. Okay, you have alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, P, our pi, rho, sigma, tau, epsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. So those are the names. It just takes more practice for you to get them. But with time, it will become natural. With time, it will become natural, especially as you read the Greek New Testament along with your English Bible or any other language. So those are the names. And then we need to know how they are written in lowercase. So the yellows, this shows how these letters are written in lowercase. This shows how these letters are written in lowercase. And then this shows how these letters are written in lowercase. So you have the yellow shows the lowercase, the small letters that technically we call minuscule. Then the white, this shows how the letters are written in uppercase, okay? And so when you're reading the New Testament in its Greek form, you'll find some letters appearing quite differently. So don't get shocked at these different letters. No, they're the same letters, except that for some, they may be capitalized. So you just need to learn how they're capitalized. Some are not really very familiar in the English. For example, you see C, the capitalization is a kind of like the capitalization of epsilon, but there's a difference, okay? This one doesn't have the right vertical line. It doesn't have the right vertical line. So the point is that just look at them. Some are close in the English, some are not, okay? When you look at the C, would confuse, but just with more time to become, naturally, there are some which are really quite equivalent. For example, the alpha, the beta, the epsilon, the iota, the kappa, the mu, the nu, the omicron. But when you look at, for example, rho, okay, it's written in this way, small, but the uppercase is like a P, okay? Yet when you come to the P, or our pi, the uppercase is not the P. So there, just pay attention to similarities, differences, so that you don't get confused. But it takes more time for you to study the letters, then it will become natural to you. Again, some other patterns, when you look at the first 5 letters, okay, there is a kind of a break in the English sequence. In English, the first 5 letters are A, B, C, D, E. But in the Greek, it is A, B, G, D, A, B, G, D, and E. Okay, excuse me there. It's A, B, G, D, and E. So the gamma kind of breaks the English sequence. So just take note of that. The other pattern that you also need to pay attention to, letters 6 to 8. These are called the 3 consecutive letters that rhyme, okay? The zeta, the eta, the theta. You see, they all have eta, eta, eta in their name, in their pronunciation. So those are the 3 letters that rhyme. And you also need to pay attention to the sigma, okay? The sigma, the lowercase particularly, okay? The lowercase has 2 forms of the sigma. The first form of the sigma is when the sigma appears between different letters. And then the last case of the sigma is when the sigma appears at the end of the word. We are going to see examples there. So these are preliminaries to do with the Greek alphabet. Shortly, we are going to go in Matthew 1 for an illustration. But before we go to Matthew 1 for that particular illustration, I want still to take you to the pronunciation, how these letters are pronounced. Now, take note, there are 3 ways of pronunciation. There is the modern pronunciation, as used in Greece today. Then there is the Koine pronunciation that scholars believe was the pronunciation in time of Jesus, quite complex complex pronunciation. And then there is the generally acceptable, especially within Western scholars, the Erasmian pronunciation. Now, since most Western scholars use the Erasmian pronunciation tradition, that's what we are going to be using, and that's the pronunciation that we need to learn here quickly. So, what do we have here? I have three major columns. I have this column, okay, and I have the next column, and then the third column. So there are three major columns, but we're going to start with the first column to see how to pronounce those particular letters. So the alpha is pronounced as A, just like in the word father. Beta is pronounced as Ba, as in the word Bible. Okay. Gamma is pronounced as Ga, just like in the word gone. Then delta is pronounced as Da, just like in the word dog. Then epsilon is pronounced as A, just like in the word met. Then the zeta is pronounced as Za, just like in the word des. Then the eta is pronounced as A, just like in the word obey. Then the theta is pronounced as Thi, just like in the word think. Okay, so that gives the pronunciation of this particular first column. The second column, the iota is pronounced as Yi, just like in the word intrigue. The kappa is pronounced as Ka, just like in the word kitchen. The lambda is pronounced as La, just like in the word law. The mu is pronounced as Ma, just like in the word mother. The nu is pronounced as new, just like in the word new. The xi is pronounced as xi, just like in the word axiom. The omicron is pronounced as A, just like in the word nut. The P is pronounced as P, just like in the word peach. The rho is pronounced as Ra, just like in the word rod. The sigma is pronounced as Sa or S, just like in the word study. The tau is pronounced as Ta, just like in the word talk. The upsilon is pronounced as U, just like in the word put. The phi is pronounced as F, just like in the word phone. The key is pronounced as, just like in the word lock. The psi is pronounced as ps, just like in the word lips. And the omega is pronounced as O, just like in the word tongue. Now, that's a pronunciation. It takes some practice, but you need to just learn how to pronounce. And the secret is when you get the Greek text, just when as you're reading, try to pronounce each letter. That's the secret. You pronounce each letter. So if you know how the letters are pronounced and you know how they appear, by now you should be able to read the Greek text. Whether you understand the words or not, you should be able to read. Okay, you should be able to read, and with practice, you become better. Before we go to Matthew 1, where I want to practice some small reading and seeing of the letters, how they appear, I'll take a few minutes to explain the classification of consonants. Consonants are classified as either stops, sibilant, double letters, or non-stops. Those are three. Now, within stops, we have labials, we have dentals, and gutturals. Now, labials, they are pronounced using lips, okay? Labio comes from the Latin word labia for lips. Then the dentals are pronounced using the teeth. The tongue, in a way, hits the teeth, stops at the teeth. The teeth stop the tongue, okay? From the Latin word den for teeth. That's why they're called dentals. Then the gutturals are pronounced using movement of the throat. The throat goes down, the tongue hits the upper roof of the throat and pronounce that particular letter. So they're called gutturals from the Latin word for throat. Gutter. Now, the Latin speaking audience, please forgive my pronunciation of the Latin. So labials, we have beta, we have P, and we have phi. So you can see beta, P, the lips are involved. Then the dentals, we have delta, tau, and theta. Delta, tau, and theta. So the teeth kind of stop the tongue. And then the gutturals, you have the gamma, kappa, and the chi. Now, gamma, kappa, and the chi, you use the throat to pronounce them. Okay, so these are what we call stops. In fact, when you look at these stops, they form a square of 3 by 3 And that's why sometimes they are called the square of stops. Then the next category are the sibilant double letters. Now, these are letters that have a sound or a hissing sound. Okay, they include the C, they include the zeta, and they include the X. They include the X. Now, one of the how these letters are formed, they are formed by one of the letters from the stops plus a sigma. So, for instance, the C is as a result of the P, okay, this P here. When you add a sigma to the P, you get C. So they are kind of two letters within one. So that's where the double comes from. When you look at the zeta, you have a delta plus a sigma, and then you get a kind of Z, kind of dizzy, but it is Z. Okay. And then when you look at the C, you get the kappa plus a sigma, and then you have the X. So those are sibilant double letters. They have a hissing sound, but they kind of have two letters, one of the stops plus a sigma. So that is sibilant double letters. Then you have non-stops. You have liquid letters, that's the lambda and the rho. You have nozzles, that's the nu, and the gamma nozzle. The gamma nozzle is when two gammas appear in a word. The second gamma is not pronounced as a G, but as an N, just like in the word angelos. The word angelos, from where we get the word angel. Okay, that N in the word angel, in the Greek, it's actually G. Okay, so that's a gamma nozzle. Some authors classify nozzles as liquids, and that's acceptable. And then we have the sigma as the sibilant single letter. So this is a classification of consonants. Again, before we go to Matthew 1 to practice some reading, we need to understand the Greek vowels. But before I focus on the vowels, let us do a little practice about the alphabet. Let me see if you can recall the names of the letters. We go together. The first one is alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, p, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega. Yeah, it could be too challenging for the start, but with the practice, you will get better and better. And remember the secret when you're reading the Greek text, try to pronounce each letter using the Erasmus pronunciation that you have said. Now, just focusing on the vowels. Take note, the vowels include the alpha, the epsilon, the eta, the iota, the omicron, the upsilon, and the omega. Okay, those are the 7 Greek vowels. Take note, a vowel can either be long, it could be short, or it could either be long or short depending on the circumstances. But what's the message for now that you should understand is that the epsilon is always a short vowel. The omicron is always a short vowel. That's critical for you to understand. Epsilon and omicron are always short. And then the eta is always a long vowel. And then the omega is always a long vowel. So understand that the eta and the omega are always long vowels. Now, the alpha, okay, and the iota and the upsilon, they could either be long or short depending on the circumstances. Okay, so again, take some time, understand the vowels, which ones are long, which ones are short, and what do we mean by long or short? It refers to the relative length of time it requires to pronounce the vowel. Okay, with time it will take some to be easier. All right, so having looked at the vowels, let us do a little practice in Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 and verse 2. Matthew chapter 1, verse 1 and verse 2. This is what the scripture says. So look at verse 1. I have on the right my Greek New Testament, that's the Nestle-Aland 28th edition. Then I have on the left my English Standard Version. Okay, so I have a number of versions: King James, New King James, NIV, NET, New American Standard Bible, and I could be playing around with any of them to illustrate any point. So Matthew 1:1, you have the first word highlighted blue. You see it has it has two beta. The first beta is uppercase. The next beta is lowercase. So this is iota. This is lambda. Remember the B is pronounced as ba. The vowel gives the pronunciation. So since this is E, so this becomes B, and then B. So I have B. So this is consonant, lambda, and then this is omicron. So I have bibulus. That's the word for book. But you see how the sigma is written when it's at the end? That's the second form of the sigma. That's how I write the sigma at the end. The next one that I've highlighted purple here, you see that this is iota, but capital uppercase, a majuscule, and then this is the eta, then this is the sigma. You see how the sigma is written between a word? This is a sigma, yet this is a sigma, but when it's between a word or between letters, this is how it is written. So this is Isu Christu. So this is the key, okay? The key, which is Kri. Again, this is the sigma, Christu. So Biblos, Isu Christu, just Jesus Christ. And then look at this, which I've highlighted in yellow. You have a delta, but it's uppercase, and they have a delta at the end, which is lowercase. Try to read this that I've highlighted in yellow. If this is the DA, epsilon, Daid, Daud, from where we get David. And then this is Abram, from where we get Abraham. And this is alpha uppercase, and then this is alpha lowercase. So you can see the verse when you're able to read it now in Greek, okay? We try to read together. Biblos, Geneseos, Isu Christu, Hugh, Dawood, Hugh, Abraham. Okay, Abraham, Egenesen, Tan, Isaac. You see, the green is Isaac. Isaac, the Egenesen, Tan, Jacob. So you see, Isaac is Isaac, and you can see the sigma, which is the S sound. So it's written differently than when it's at the end, and this is Jacob. So you can see that already from what we have been able to do, you are able to read the Greek New Testament, and just takes time. So it starts slowly, fearing, not very sure, but don't worry, it takes time. It takes time. Continuously as you engage with the text, it will become natural for you. All right. So let us look at diphthongs. Now, what are diphthongs? Just look at the red ribbon there. These are two vowels that are pronounced as a single letter. There are two vowels that are pronounced as a single letter. Remember, we have mentioned that when you are reading Greek, you have to pronounce each letter. That's the rule of thumb. But there's an exception. Even when you have to pronounce each letter, when you find two vowels, which of which the last vowel is either an iota or epsilon, then you pronounce those two vowels as a single letter. Okay. For example, when you have the alpha and the iota, those are two vowels, and the last vowel is iota, you pronounce them as I. Okay, just like in the word I. So it's just I. And then when you have epsilon and iota, you pronounce it as A, just like in the word 8. Okay, then when you have omicron and iota, you pronounce it as oil, just like in the word oil. Then you have alpha. If you have alpha and the epsilon, you pronounce this as owl, just like in the word crowd. If you have omicron and epsilon, you pronounce this as oo, just like the word soup. Ooh, soup. If you have epsilon and iota, you pronounce it as you see the word suit as in u, suit. suit. No, if you have an epsilon and epsilon, you pronounce it as U, just like now feud, no, feud, E. Then you have eta and epsilon, still you pronounce as in feud, E. So those are letters that are pronounced. There are two vowels, and the last vowel must either be an iota or epsilon. They are pronounced as a single letter. These are verses that I would want us to look at to appreciate this particular point. Let me get to my Bible. And the first verse that I want to deal with is John chapter 16, verse 22. Okay, so I'm going to be running through these particular verses that are here. John 16, 22. Let me get there. John chapter 16 and verse 22. All right. So you see John chapter 16, verse 22. I'll read the English quickly. The ESV says, so also you have sorrow now, but I will see you again, and your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take your joy from you. So I'm looking at the word will take in the Greek. See, it's here, highlighted yellow on the right. So the alpha and the iota, they make a diphthong because they are two vowels and the last is iota. Remember, if there are two vowels and the last is either iota or so, that means that's a diphthong, and you pronounce them as single letter. Look at also the last two letters. You have the epsilon and iota. Okay, epsilon and iota. Again, the two vowels. The last one is iota, so that forms a diphthong. So this one I'll just read as array. Okay, array. So you see, I'm pronouncing them as single letter. And then in Matthew chapter 4, verse 3, it says, and the tempter came, the ESV says, and the tempter came and said to him, if you are the Son of God, command these stones to become loaves of bread. Okay, I'm looking at the word if. Okay, so remember I have epsilon and iota, so that becomes a. So I'm just pronouncing the epsilon, a. Okay, so I'm not saying a, I'm not saying a, I just say a. So you pronounce as a single letter. The next is Mark chapter 3, verse 25. And if a house is divided against itself, that house will not be able to stand. Okay, I'm looking at the Greek word for house. Okay, so I have omicron and iota that forms a diphthong. Remember, that's close to oil. So this is the Greek word for house, which is oikia. So I pronounce that diphthong as a single letter. The next is Hebrews 1:5. Okay, Hebrews 1:5 says, for to which of the angels did God ever say, you are my son, today I have begotten you? Or again, I'll be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. So I'm looking at the Greek word for he. Okay, so I have the alpha and the epsilon as the diphthong, so that becomes autos. So I pronounce them as a single letter. The next is John 5:19. So Jesus said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, that the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only that which he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise. So I'm looking at the Greek word for the word nothing. Okay, so you see here on the right, it's highlighted yellow. It is the omicron and epsilon, just like now soup. Okay, just like now soup. So this becomes uden. So I pronounce the omicron and the epsilon as a single letter. The next word, the next verse is Matthew chapter 3, verse 17. And behold, a voice from heaven said, this is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. So I'm looking at the word for son, highlighted yellow on the right. Okay, so that is epsilon and the iota that forms a diphthong. Okay, just like in the word suit. So this becomes eos. Okay, that's the word for son. So I pronounce them as a single letter. Then John 19, verse 34, the Net Bible says, but one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and blood and water flowed out immediately. The New American Standard Bible says, but one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and immediately blood came out. So I'm looking at the word immediately. Okay, immediately. The King James says, but one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water. Forthwith. So I'm looking at the word at once. The ESV says at once there came out blood and water. So that word on the right, you see here in yellow, it is epsilon and the upsilon that forms a diphthong, the circular field. So this becomes euphus. Okay, euphus. So you can see diphthongs. And then lastly, I look at Acts 12:24, one of my best verses from an apostolic perspective. Acts 12 verse 24 says, but the word of God increased and multiplied. So I'm looking at the word increased. Okay, when you look at the net says kept on increasing to try to render the Greek more accurately. The New Standard Bible says continue to grow. Okay, the NIV says continue to spread. So I'm looking at that word increased, continue to grow, kept on increasing, continue to spread. King James says grew. New King James says grew. Okay, so that's the word I'm looking at. From the New Testament, you see, I have the eta and the upsilon that forms a diphthong, so I read it as ixanen. So that's increase, kept on growing, continue to grow, continue to spread. So that summarizes the word on the work on diphthongs. So we need now to understand diacriticals. Now, what are diacriticals? These are reading guide marks. So as you're reading, there are marks that are all over the Greek text that you need to understand what do these marks mean. Okay, so there are some are punctuation marks, others are breathing marks, others are iota subscripts, others are iota adscripts, others are diareses, others are accents, others are elisions. Okay, elisions. So let us begin with punctuation marks. So punctuation marks, there are three things that we need to understand. How to write a period or a full stop in Greek? How to write a comma in Greek? Good thing, period, comma, or a full stop and a comma. The way we write them in English is the way we write them in Greek. How do you write a semicolon in Greek versus English? The semicolon in English, okay, is written in Greek, it's written as a period or a dot above line. And we're going to see that, okay? Then how to write a question mark? The question mark, you see the question mark in English, but when it comes to the Greek, the question mark in the Greek is written like our semicolon of English, okay? So this should not confuse you, you just have to pay attention and to be aware. Now, with the practice, the more you continue reading, the more, and as you read the Greek text and as you compare with your English version, you'll be able to see, to understand this, and to become natural with time. Let me read some of these verses to illustrate this point. Okay. Let me read these verses to illustrate this point. So I'll begin with John chapter 1 and verse 1. John chapter 1 and verse 1. Okay. So look at the word logos. Okay. This word logos is the where we get the word. Okay. Logos kai ha. Logos. The beginning was the word and the word. Okay. Logos. En proston theon kai theos en ha logos. So the point is, when you look at the word logos, there is a comma. When you look at the Greek, there is a comma. When you look at the English, there is a comma. So commas are written the same way. Look at the end of the first verse. The end of the first verse in Greek is a full stop, and the end of the first verse in English is a full stop. The whole point is that commas and period or full stops are written in the same way. Are written in Greek in the same way as you write them in English. Okay, so let me go to the semicolon. Okay, I go to Matthew 5:17, again, one of my precious verses, especially regarding the Tanakh. Do not think that I've come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but fulfill them. Look at the word prophets. There is a semicolon in English. Okay, let us look at the Greek. The word prophetess. The semicolon is represented by a dot above line. So what we are saying is that the semicolon of English, the semicolon of Greek is a dot above line. So a dot above line, just think about the semicolon of English. Good. So the next is the question mark. Again, one of my precious verses, John chapter 4, verse 29. Okay. Come, see a man who told me. all that I ever did. Can this be the Christ? So you see, you have a question mark in English. So how is that question mark in the Greek? Autos esteem ha Christos. So you see the question mark in Greek, it is the way we write our semicolon. Okay. So the whole point is we need to pay attention as we're reading the text how punctuation marks are. So that's the first diacritical. The second one are breathing marks. Okay. Now, breathing marks, these are on words beginning with either a vowel or a row. So a breathing mark would be smooth. If a breathing mark is smooth, okay, let me highlight this here. Look at the word N. Just look at this that I've highlighted yellow. I've circled it yellow. So there is a kind of our apostrophe, okay? If you have an apostrophe above a letter and it is looking to the right, okay? It's looking to the right. Okay? It's going out of opposite the word. That is smooth. So there is no effect. You just pronounce the letter. But if you have the opposite of our apostrophe above a letter, it is opposite the English apostrophe. It looks, you know, it is to the left, okay, or writing the way the letter, the word is flowing. So that just get as if it is opposite, that is rough. What it means that before you pronounce that letter, add an H sound. Add an H sound. Now, the other thing that we must take note of the breathing marks is if it is before a capital letter, it will not be above the letter, but it will be beside the letter, before, just like you see here, and we're going to see that. It will be before. That is if the first letter is uppercase or majuscule. Now, the other is if there is a diphthong. Remember, diphthong are two vowels of which the last, there are two vowel letters of which the last letter is either iota or omicron. If it's a diphthong, that breathing mark will be on the second vowel, but the pronunciation rules are the same. Our normal apostrophe is no effect. The opposite of our normal apostrophe adds an H sound. So I'll give some examples. Again, I'll begin with 1 Corinthians chapter 1 and verse 1. Okay. It says, Paul, called by the will of God to be an apostle of Christ. I'm looking at the word apostle. So you see, this is the word apostle. So there is this kind of apostrophe above the alpha. So this one just means, just read it as apostolos. Don't say apostolos, don't add H. But look at here, the breathing mark is coming before a capital letter. So it's not above, it's besides. That's what we're meaning. So this is, just read this letter the way it is, okay? Isu, okay? Apostle of Christ Jesus. Christo Isu. So I just read it. I don't say Isu. I don't add H sound, okay? In Acts chapter 4, verse 12, Acts chapter 4, verse 12, and there is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. So look at the letters, the words I've highlighted, okay? The first one is the word for no. So you see, we have a normal apostrophe, we have a normal kind of apostrophe above a letter, so it means this one, no effect. So this one is just yuk, oik, okay? No problem. Then come to this one that I've highlighted against the word for other or else. Okay, that's allo. Okay, allo. And then look at this one. This is a normal apostrophe, so no H. That's udeni. Okay, udeni. Okay. So also look at this is the word for no one. Also look at the purple. It's a normal kind of apostrophe. This is the breathing mark, so no H sound. But look at the orange. I want you to draw attention to the orange. Okay, the word for under. So you see it has a kind of apostrophe, but it's opposite. So it means for this one, you don't say upo, you say hupo. Hupo, you add H sound. Okay, you add H sound. Look at also the last one, which is the word pronoun for we. Okay, you have this breathing mark. So that is, you don't say emas, you say hemas. It adds H, the H sound. So it takes time. It takes time, but as you practice, it will become easier for you. It will become easier as you practice. Then we have the iota subscript and iota descript. Now, iota subscript, just look at the red ribbons. The improper diphthong is when a long vowel, okay, is followed by an iota. That iota goes under it. If a long vowel is followed by an iota, that iota goes under it. Okay, but if that long vowel is uppercase, that iota does not go under it. It stays on the same line. So these are the two issues. So where the iota goes under, that is iota subscript. Where the iota stays on the same line, that is iota adscript. When does it stay on the same line? If it is uppercase, if it is a capital letter. Okay, let us look at some of these verses for purposes of illustration. You will see, I'll begin with Matthew 5:8. So you see Matthew 5:8. I'm looking at the word for love, agape. So you see there is a kind of small L under the eta. So it means this was an iota that was following the eta. Okay, so you shouldn't wonder what is this. That's an iota subscript. Then I will go to 1 Corinthians. I'll first go to Romans 12, verse 2. I'm looking at the word law here, okay? Normal, you see under the omega, there's a kind of small L. It means that that's an iota that went under the vowel. Okay, so that's an iota subscript. Then, and the number of other verses. But now look at John chapter 18, verse 2. John chapter 18, verse 2, the word new, okay, begins with an eta and the uppercase. So because this eta is uppercase, don't confuse this to be H. It is the uppercase of eta. It is followed by an iota. This iota does not go under. That is iota adscript. When you compare this with Acts 7:18, so you see here you have the eta. It is not uppercase, and the iota has gone below. Okay, so you see the difference. When the eta is uppercase, the iota does not go below, that's adscript. When the iota is lowercase, it goes below, that is underscript. Okay, so we know what iota subscript is, iota adscript is. Then there's what we call diaresis. Now, diaresis, remember we've said diphthongs must be pronounced as a single letter. Okay, diphthongs must be pronounced as a single letter. But where the diphthong has two dots above it, it means don't pronounce them as a single letter, pronounce each letter as independent. I'll give an example of these particular verses I'll begin with John, let me see if I'm able to locate. John chapter 1, verse 23 says, "For he said, I am the voice of one crying out to the Lord, and make straight the way of the Lord, as the prophet Isaiah said." So you see the word Isaiah, the iota has two dots above it, so it means this is not a diphthong. So when you're pronouncing this, you'll say Isaias, Isaias. So you pronounce them as separate letters. The same thing happens in Romans 16:23 about Gaius. So the iota has two dots, so it means this is a diaresis, it's not a diphthong. So you say Gaios, okay? And then Luke 3:20, Luke 3:36, the son of Canaan. Son of Canaan, I'm looking at the name Canaan in Greek. So you see Canaan, the iota has two, so it means this is not a diphthong. Okay, so you pronounce it separately. Pronounce it separately. So hope that makes sense, and hope it is understandable for you. Hope it understandable for you. So that's what we mean by diaresis. And then we have accents. Now accents, they demonstrate pitch and stress, okay? So we have the acute accent, we have the grave accent, we have the circumflex. How do they appear? Acute, when you see a letter and there is something in this direction, that is an acute accent. If it is like this, just like here, that is a grave accent. And if it's you find a letter and there is either this or this, something like this, that's a circumflex. And what do they mean? Really is that for the acute, the voice goes up. For the grave, the voice goes down. For the circumflex, the voice goes up and down. Now, the point is this should not really give you a lot of headache because that's the pitch. But given the complexity of the pitch system and the fact that many of us who studied biblical Greek are not even musical, so most of us are comfortable with just saying that where you find an accent, just stress when you're pronouncing. So when I'm saying Christos, so I'll emphasize the Omicron. When I'm saying Theos, I'll emphasize the Omicron. When I say Jesus, I will emphasize the upsilon. Jesus, I will place emphasis, I will stress it, okay? But those are accents. So don't wonder what these marks are. Then there's what we call the elison. The elison is an apostrophe at the end of a word that implies a dropped vowel, okay? Implies a vowel that dropped. There are some circumstances where vowels are dropped, okay? Where vowels drop and they are showed by the elison. And I'll give a few examples of those cases. I'll go to John chapter 1, verse 3. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything else made. So I'm looking at the word through. So you see in the Greek, it's just delta and iota, and then there is a kind of apostrophe at the end. Okay. So now that shows that there is a letter that dropped. We shall see why letters drop later. But there is a letter that there is a vowel that you drop. That's what this elison mark means. So this is an elison mark. It is not a breathing mark. Okay. And then when you go to John chapter 10, verse 18, it says, no one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and I have authority to take it up. So I'm looking at the word from. So you see the Greek has alpha and then the P, and then there is a mark at the end. Remember, this is not a breathing mark because breathing marks only happen on the first letters. Okay. So for example, in this word, this is a breathing mark, but this is an elison. Okay. It just shows that there is a letter that dropped. Why did that letter drop? We shall see it later. And then lastly, I can also look at Mark chapter 2, verse 19. And Jesus said to them, and the wedding guests fast while the bridegroom is with them. As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. So I'm looking at the word with. So look at the word with. So you have here, it's met. And at the end, there is a mark there. That's not a breathing mark. That's an elison. It just shows that there is a letter that dropped. Let me just show the letters that dropped again. So you can see that in John 1:3, the letter that dropped was the alpha. So this alpha dropped. This in the apple, the Omicron drops, and then it becomes this, and then the meta, the alpha drops. So when those letters drop, and we shall see the circumstances under which those letters drop, that is an elison. Okay, that's an elison. All right. So having gone through this session, you should be able to read a New Testament in its original language. However, it requires practice. With that, may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Amen. Thank you.